Hello there and welcome to Project Business Basics, designed to give you the tools to make smarter financial decisions. Whether you're looking to learn something brand new or just want a refresher on some basic economics, there's a place for everyone on our show. I'm Archit Janarkar and I'm your host. Today we're going to be talking about dividends. Now we've talked about dividends before, especially when discussing the strategy of dividend investing. But let's just briefly review how dividends work. Dividends work in that profitable businesses will receive income, and sometimes just based on the business's age and its life cycle, a business may not need all the money that it makes. For example, let's say that a business makes $100 million in income. Now, of this $100 million, a business may only really need 75 million of those dollars. So what does it do with that remaining portion? It decides to distribute that remaining portion to its shareholders, the people who own its stock. So with that remaining 25 million, they might divide it by the number of shares there are. And let's just say that there were 50 million shares of this company. Well, 25 million divided by 50 million shares is 50 cents. So that means that 50 cents will be distributed for every share that is owned by an investor. So if I own 10 shares, I get 50 cents per share. So I end up with $5 given back to me by the company. And that income I get, or those dividends I get, can be used by me as the investor in any way I want. I can choose to go buy another stock, I can choose to go use that money for my own personal needs, or I can just choose to reinvest that money back into this business and buy even more shares. So that's how dividends work. Now what we're going to talk about for the rest of the episode is the distribution of dividends, especially in regards to the timeline of doing so. There is first the declaration date. On the declaration date, usually whenever a business decides to distribute dividends, the dividend needs to be approved by the business's board of directors. Every public company has a board of directors. It's usually a group of 10 to 20 people, most of whom are independent of the company. And these people are just there to make sure the company is running smoothly. So the board of directors usually declares that, okay, we have some extra money that we made, we don't need it right now, so we'll give it to you, our shareholders, in the form of a dividend. And so then they declare that dividend. Now with the declaration of the dividend, they're going to declare several dates. They'll first declare the ex-dividend date. The ex-dividend date is the date by which you must have bought a share of the business in order to receive a dividend. So let's say that today is January 1st. That's the declaration date. So the board of directors decides to issue a dividend. And then they say that the ex-dividend date is January 5th. What that means is that I have to own a share of the company before January 5th. If I buy the company stock on January 5th, I am not eligible to receive a dividend from the company. I have to have bought on January 4th or earlier. And I'm saying one day before the ex-dividend date, but really I should be saying one business day. So if the ex-dividend date is on a Monday, I have to have owned shares of the company by the Friday before that Monday in order to be eligible to receive the dividend. Now, along with an ex-dividend date, they're going to be declaring a record date. The record date in almost all situations regarding dividends is the date after the ex-dividend date. So in this example I was using, the ex-dividend date was January 5th. Then the record date is going to be January 6th. And what the record date is the company is going to go check its list of shareholders. And they're going to make note and say all these people are registered as shareholders, so they're the people who are going to get the dividend. Now the reason why the ex-dividend date exists is because whenever you buy a share of a company, it usually takes about 2 business days for your name to appear on the company's record of shareholders. So that's why if you went and bought the company's share on January 5th, your name won't appear on their records until it's too late on January 7th. And that won't make you eligible for the dividend. So that's why the ex-dividend date in that case is very important, because you have to have bought your shares before the ex-dividend date. That way your name is there on time for the record date, when the company goes to look at its list of shareholders. And then finally, the fourth date that you have is the payment date. This is finally then when dividend checks are sent and mailed out to shareholders and investors. Okay, so let's recap. As a brief reminder, dividends are whenever a company has some extra money that they don't need. Then they might decide to reward their shareholders by giving some of that money to the investors. So however much they're planning to distribute total in dividends, they'll divide that number by the number of shares that are out there, or the shares outstanding. And that value will be the dividend amount per share. Now, dividends, though, are declared or approved by the board of directors. And the date on which the board of directors approves the dividend is known as the declaration date. And with the declaration date, the board is going to set the following 3 dates. On the ex-dividend date, that is the date by which you must have bought shares. If you buy shares on the ex-dividend date or later, you're not eligible to receive the dividend. You have to have bought shares before the ex-dividend date. And the reason for this is because there is something called T+2, where it takes 2 business days from the transaction date in order for your name to be recorded on the company's list of shareholders. And that takes us to the record date. The record date, if you remember, is usually the day after the ex-dividend date, when the company goes and looks at its records of shareholders and says, okay, these are the people who are our shareholders and they will receive our dividend. And then finally, there is the payment date, when the company ultimately ends up paying the dividend to investors. I hope you enjoyed that episode and learned something from it. If you're looking for recommendations for good investing and business books, I encourage you to check out the Project Business Basics blog, and also sign up for the Project Business Basics newsletter. You can do all this through the Project Business Basics website, which is www.businessbasics.online. Also, make sure to check out our social media. We're on Instagram and Twitter with the username at PROJBIZ Basics. I'm Archit Janarkar. This is Project Business Basics. Thanks for listening,